I had only 1% battery left on my phone when I saw it again, that tall, thin shape standing at the end of the narrow mountain path. Its shoulders were bent, like it had been crawling for too long. Its head tilted slowly, as if trying to study me. The fog behind it shifted, swallowing the trail I had come from. My legs were trembling so hard the stones under my boots kept sliding. I couldn't see its face, only a long, dark outline that twitched every few seconds, like it couldn't hold still. Then it stepped closer. Once. Twice. And as it moved, I realized something horrifying. It walked exactly the way I walked. Same limp. Same weight on one leg. Same rhythm. That's when my phone died. I opened my mouth to yell for help, but the shape raised a hand, my hand, and quietly pressed a finger to where its lips should have been. "Don't," it whispered. My voice. And that's where everything truly began. My name is Kalen. I'm 23, and 3 months ago I hiked a mountain trail called Wolf Rest Ridge by myself. I'd been tired of school, tired of the city, tired of the static noise in my own head. Everyone said hiking clears your mind. No one said anything about something copying you in the woods. Let me take you back to the start, before the cold nights, the mimic voice, the thing that wanted to be me. I began early in the morning. The trail was long but the weather was good, thin sun, cool wind, and a silence deep enough to make your ears ring. Wolf Rest Ridge wasn't famous, just an old trail people stopped using. I didn't meet a single person on the way up. Around noon, in a small clearing, I heard footsteps behind me. Heavy ones. Slow. Dragging. When I turned, there was nobody. Just trees. Just the quiet. I told myself it was an animal or an echo. But when I looked down, a chill ran through me. My footprints were clear in the soft dirt. Right beside them was another set. Same shape, same size, but deeper, like someone heavier walked exactly where I had. I hesitated, but kept going. I made camp near a tall rock pile overlooking a wide valley. The sky turned orange, the silence warm again. I ate, watched the light fade, and crawled into my tent. Around midnight, footsteps started outside. Slow. Testing the ground. They paused for long stretches, then continued, unsure, like whoever was out there didn't quite understand how walking worked. Then came breathing, slow, steady, matching mine. I held my breath. The breathing stopped too. I let out a shaky exhale. It copied. I whispered, "Who's there?" No answer. Just the sound of someone lowering themselves to the ground beside the tent. Leaves shifted under their weight. Then the breathing moved closer until it felt like their face was pressed right against the thin tent wall. I didn't sleep. In the morning, I stepped outside expecting footprints. There were none. No signs of anyone. Only leaves pressed down where something had lain, in the same position I had slept in. That was the first moment I thought about turning back. I should have. As I climbed the next day, the forest felt wrong. The air heavy. Birds silent. Wind quiet. Every few minutes I felt footsteps behind me, mirroring mine. Once, when I stopped to drink water, I heard another bottle cap twist somewhere behind the trees. I froze. I hadn't opened mine yet. But the sound continued, turning, tightening, like someone pretending. That was when I understood, it wasn't trying to scare me. It was trying to learn me. That afternoon, my phone buzzed repeatedly despite having no service. When I checked, dozens of blank messages filled the screen. Then one wasn't blank. "Look behind you." I spun around, heart hammering. Nothing. Another message appeared. "Slower. You're doing it wrong." My stomach sank. I had said those words earlier while adjusting my backpack straps. Something had been listening from close enough to hear whispers. I stuffed the phone away and climbed faster. Halfway up the rocks, I slipped. My phone skidded out and bounced down between boulders, disappearing. Now I was stranded, alone, and whatever was out there knew it. By evening, fog rolled in thick, coiling around trees. I set up camp again but didn't try to sleep. The night air felt too dense, too watched. Hours later I noticed the fog shifting like something large moved through it. My fingers tightened on my knife. I held my breath. That was when I saw it. A tall, thin figure stood at the edge of the fog. Not moving. Not breathing. Watching. At first I thought it was a tree. Then it stepped forward. Its legs bent wrong, like it was trying to remember how people walk. I backed away. My knife slipped from my shaking hand. The figure raised its hand and scratched the back of its head, exactly the way I do when I'm scared. I ran. I didn't think. I grabbed my pack, tore through branches, tripped, got up again. The ground under my feet was a blur. Behind me, the shape followed with slow, deliberate steps, almost as if savoring the moment. Sometime before dawn, I reached the narrow ridge. Fog churned below like a pale ocean. My phone, impossibly, flickered to life in my pocket with 1% battery. I didn't question it. I just held it like a lifeline. That was when the shape appeared at the end of the path. Its head tilted at a jagged angle. Its stride matched my new limp, the one I got from running all night. I tried to back away but felt the drop behind me. One wrong step and I'd fall. The phone died. The shape raised my hand, my gesture, my rhythm, and pressed a finger to invisible lips. "Don't," it whispered. My exact voice. It moved closer, slow and careful, like approaching an animal. It reached out, not to grab but as if to lay its hand over my face, gently, almost tenderly. Like claiming something. Something snapped inside me. I ran past it, shoulder brushing its cold outline. It didn't chase, only turned its head in a slow, broken arc, watching. I ran until sunrise. When I finally reached my car, I collapsed. A ranger found me hours later. They told me searchers went up because my car had been left overnight. I tried to explain what happened. The words stuck in my throat. How do you tell someone something tried to copy you? To replace you? They found no other hikers. No footprints. No signs of anyone. I went home shaking. Days later, when I finally turned on my phone, my hands were steady for the first time since the mountain. There was only one new photo in my gallery. A picture of me sleeping in my tent. Taken inches from my face. And I never heard it enter. The river was ice cold, but I could still hear his teeth clicking in the dark water. He stood in the stream, half submerged, not drowning, not calling for help, just standing perfectly still like the current didn't touch him at all. The moonlight hit the water just right, and I finally saw his face. Or what was left of it. His skin was pale and stretched tight, like it had been frozen for days. His eyes were open, locked on me, even though I was sure he shouldn't still be alive. And then he whispered, "Don't go back to your tent." His voice sounded cracked and waterlogged, like he'd been trying to speak from underwater for hours. Fear sat on my chest, making it hard to breathe. I stepped back, shaking, but he slowly shook his head. Then I saw something, a long, dark shape sliding behind him beneath the surface, like a shadow with arms. He didn't turn around. He didn't try to escape. He only whispered one more thing before the water swallowed him. It followed me too. The river behind him rose, bulging upward like something massive was rising from below. That was the night everything fell apart. My name is Landon. I'm 21, and 2 months ago, I hiked the Deep Pine Crossing Trail alone. I used to love hiking by myself, the quiet, the space, the clarity. I used to think the woods were safe as long as you respected them. I don't believe that anymore. The first day was normal. Early morning sun, tall pines, the river running beside the path like a constant companion. Deep Deep Pine Crossing wasn't crowded, so I didn't expect to see many people, but I ended up seeing no one. Not a single hiker. It felt peaceful. Safe. The second day was when the peace cracked. Around noon I spotted a torn backpack leaning against a tree. Old, weather-worn, covered in dirt and pine needles. I opened it and found a jacket, one glove, a map, and a soaked notebook with nearly all the pages ruined. All except one. Scratched deeply into the last page were 5 words. Stay away from the water after dark. I stared at the river. It looked normal, cold, steady, calm. But the warning twisted my stomach. Still, I kept walking. My camp that night was close enough to the water that I could hear it flowing. Around midnight, I heard splashing, but not little splashes. Heavy ones. The kind a grown man makes when walking through thigh-deep water. Each step dragged, slow and uneven. I unzipped my tent and looked out. A tall figure moved through the river. My first thought was that it was a hiker crossing, maybe lost or disoriented. But the way he moved wasn't right. He didn't lift his legs. He dragged them like they belonged to someone else. I aimed my flashlight toward him. The splashing stopped instantly. The river became silent, like it was holding its breath. I stayed awake the rest of the night, listening to the water and the pounding in my ears. By morning, it all felt unreal. But as I continued along the trail, a strange freezing breeze blew from the river, far colder than the summer air. I crouched and touched the water. It burned with cold, like touching something frozen solid. Then I saw footprints on the rocks, wet, bare, human footprints. But they weren't leading out of the river. They led into it. Fresh. Deep. Too big to be mine. A chill climbed up my spine. I forced myself to keep moving. Toward evening, the river bent close to the trail again, and that's when I saw him. A man stood waist deep in the water, facing down. His clothes clung to his pale body like he had been standing there for hours. His skin was ice white, almost bluish. But what froze me was how still he was, like the river wasn't even touching him. I whispered, "Are you okay?" His head lifted slowly. His lips were blue. His eyes didn't blink. His face looked wrong, like something had pulled the life out of it but left the body standing. He whispered, "Don't go back to your tent." The sound of his voice made me feel sick, muffled, watery, like he had been speaking underwater. Before I could say anything, something shifted behind him. A dark shape moved under the surface, long and smooth, circling him. He didn't look at it. He didn't react. "It followed me too," he said. Then the river behind him rose sharply, higher than it should have been able to. Something huge surged upward and yanked him under in one violent motion. He didn't scream. He didn't fight. He was just gone. The river went still, like nothing had happened. I stumbled back, my breath shaking. The sun was almost gone. I didn't want to be anywhere near the water after dark. I ran. By the time I pitched my tent, darkness had swallowed the forest. I could still hear the river nearby, sliding through the rocks like it was breathing. I hugged my knees inside the tent, trying to convince myself I was safe. Then I heard it. Breathing. Wet breathing. Right outside the thin fabric wall. Slow, dragging inhales. Heavy, dripping exhales. I clamped a hand over my mouth. Then came footsteps. Not on dry ground, but soaked, squishing footsteps circling my tent in a slow loop. Once. Twice. 3 times. The breathing grew louder, like someone was leaning over me. Then a whisper slid through the fabric. "Don't look at the river." The voice was the drowned man's voice. I didn't move until the sky lightened. As soon as dawn touched the trees, I grabbed everything and ran. I didn't even break down the tent. I didn't take the trail, I just tore through the woods, trying to put as much distance as possible between me and the water. But the river wound around the mountain. No matter where I went, I heard it. Sometimes close. sometimes far, sometimes like it was following me. Around noon, I reached a small wooden bridge. Relief flooded me. If I crossed it, maybe I could finally get away from the river's reach. But as I stepped onto it, I heard splashing below. Slow, heavy, dragging. My stomach dropped. I leaned over the edge. He was there. The drowned man walked through the water beneath the bridge. His pale eyes stared straight up at me. Water streamed from his open mouth. One hand reached toward the underside of the bridge beam, as if he was trying to climb up. I didn't wait. I sprinted across, slipped once, nearly fell, then bolted down the trail, branches whipping my arms, lungs burning. I ran until the river sound faded behind me. Until the trees grew familiar. Until the parking lot finally appeared through the brush. My car was the only one there. I nearly collapsed with relief. I threw my pack inside, shut the door, and grabbed my phone to call anyone, a ranger, my parents, 911, anyone. That's when I noticed the back window. A single handprint smeared across the glass. Large. Pale. Dripping water down the surface. My whole body trembled. Then my phone buzzed. A new voicemail. Timestamp, sometime after midnight. With shaking hands, I pressed play. First came the sound of water. Then footsteps, dragging through the river, slow and steady. Then a voice whispered my name. And the message ended. I drove away without looking in the rearview mirror. I haven't gone near a river since. He was calling my name from the dark trees. Not shouting. Not whispering. Just calmly repeating it like he already knew me. Levi. 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 Every time he said it, the voice came from a different spot in the woods. First to my left. Then behind me. Then above me, like he was perched in the higher branches watching. My legs were shaking so hard I could barely stand. My fire was nearly gone, little more than a dull orange glow, and the cold night seemed to press in on me from every direction. Come here, the voice said gently. It sounded close, far too close. But when I swept my flashlight across the clearing, I saw nothing but black trunks and crooked branches. Then the voice changed. It wasn't calling my name anymore. It was calling for help. Please, can you help me? The tone cracked. Sounded afraid. Sounded hurt. But something was wrong. Because it was my voice. The same words. The same tone. The same panic I'd shouted hours earlier when I caught my leg after a fall. Something out there was repeating me. Copying me. Slowly, perfectly. Then everything went silent, trees, wind, even the crackling of the fire. And the voice whispered one last thing, but it didn't sound like me at all. I see you. As I turned toward the sound, something moved behind my tent. Now let me tell you how it all began. My name is Levi. I'm 24, and I hike alone more than I should. 3 months ago, I took a solo trip along Ironwood Trail, a long, quiet mountain path that stays nearly empty once the temperatures drop. People warned me I'd barely see another soul out there. That's what I wanted. Silence. Space. Time to think. The silence I found wasn't peaceful at all. The first day was ordinary. Cold air, miles of leaf-covered ground, and tall thin trees that bent inward over the trail like they were bowing. They blocked most of the light, making everything look dim and old, but nothing felt threatening. Not until I reached a wooden sign. Most trail signs mentioned distance or direction. This one didn't. It had 5 long scratches clawed deep into the wood, all the same direction, straight and deliberate, as if something tall had dragged its hand across it. I stared too long, then convinced myself it was an animal and kept walking. By the time I set up camp that evening, the temperature had dropped sharply. I was half asleep when a voice snapped me awake. Hello? A man's voice. Close. close. I froze, listening. Is someone there? I called out. Silence. I unzipped my tent and stepped out with my flashlight. The clearing was empty, only trees swaying gently in the dark. Then the voice came again. Hello? This time from above. I aimed my beam into the branches. Nothing. No movement. No eyes reflecting back. The voice didn't return, and I forced myself to lie back down, telling myself it had to be the wind. By morning, the woods felt different, tighter. The trees seemed closer than before, like they had shifted in the night. The feeling of being watched clung to me with every step. Around midday, while climbing a rocky slope, I slipped and scraped my shin wide open. Blood smeared down my leg, stinging in the cold air. Without thinking, I shouted, "Help! Somebody help!" No one came. I cleaned the cut, wrapped it, and felt ridiculous for yelling. I didn't know yet how important that moment would be. Something had been listening. That evening, as I dropped my pack in a small campsite clearing, I heard my name whispered right behind me. Levi. Soft. Come. Too close. I whipped around with my flashlight. Nothing. I set up camp with shaking hands, refusing to think about it. But around midnight, a sound drifted through the trees, a faint echo at first. Help. I sat up hard. Help, somebody help. My stomach nodded. Those were my exact words from earlier. Spoken in my exact tone. The voice moved through the forest, repeating the call, each time closer. Help, somebody help. My whole body felt numb. I didn't sleep again. By the next morning I was exhausted, but I pushed forward. The trail should have been easy to follow, yet the woods seemed darker and heavier than before. Every few minutes, I heard soft footsteps behind me. When I walked faster, they quickened. When I slowed down, they slowed too. When I stopped, everything went silent. The silence terrified me more than the footsteps. Near evening, I spotted something between the trees. A figure. Tall. Thin. Perfectly still. No face I could see, just a dark shape like a person standing unnaturally straight. Blinking didn't help. One moment it was there, the next it was simply gone, not stepping away, not hiding. Just gone. I forced myself to set up camp again. I kept the fire big and bright, but around midnight, the calling began again. Levi. Levi. From everywhere and nowhere at once. My heartbeat pounded in my teeth. Then the voice shifted into a trembling, broken tone. Please help me. But I knew now it wasn't a person. It was something imitating one. I stayed awake until dawn, clutching a burning stick like a weapon. The next day I tried desperately to keep moving. I needed to reach the end of the trail. I needed out. 2 hours in, I realized I had been walking past the same markers as the day before, a twisted stump, a mossy boulder, a split trunk. I was walking in circles even though the trail was supposed to be straight. Something cracked a leaf behind me. I didn't want to turn. I did anyway. Nothing. But the air felt like it was filled with eyes. As night fell, I barely had the strength to set up camp again. I sat shaking beside my fire, but the moment darkness settled completely, the voice returned. This time it stayed in one place. Right behind me. Levi. I turned slowly. My flashlight trembled in my hand. Between two trees stood a man. Or something shaped like one. He didn't move. He didn't sway. He didn't breathe. His clothes looked wrong, old and dirty, hanging in stiff folds like they didn't fit his frame. And his face, though shadowed, was shaped like mine. Not exact, but close enough to make my stomach twist. Please help me, he said in my voice. My pitch. My tone. Perfect. I stumbled backward, grabbed a burning stick, and held it out. Stay away. I shouted. He didn't blink. Didn't flinch at the fire. He tilted his head, slow and unnatural, like he was studying the way I moved. Then he stepped forward. I threw the burning stick. He didn't react. He just watched. Something in me snapped. I grabbed my pack and ran. Branches tore at my arms as I sprinted in the dark, but behind me, through the trees, his voice followed. Levi. 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 I didn't stop running until the woods began to lighten. When the trees finally thinned and the trail opened into the empty parking lot, I nearly fell to my knees. My car sat alone in the pale morning sunlight. I threw myself inside, slammed the door, locked it, and sat trembling behind the wheel. Then I saw it. A torn piece of notebook paper stuck under my windshield wiper. My hands shook as I grabbed it. One line was written across it. You heard me. The handwriting was mine, but I didn't write it. She was copying every step I took. Not beside me. Not behind me. Under me. Deep beneath the ice. Every time I lifted my boot, I heard her lift hers, an echoing crack rising through the frozen lake. When I stopped walking, she stopped. When I moved an inch, she moved an inch. I could hear her breath pushing up through the ice like warm air against cold glass. Don't leave me, she whispered. Her voice traveled upward in a muffled, desperate tremor. I shined my flashlight straight down. Under the clear ice, two pale hands reached up toward the surface. Let me tell you how it started. My name is Aiden. I grew up around frozen lakes. I know the difference between settling ice, shifting currents, trapped air, but what I heard on Hollow Bend Lake wasn't any of those. I'd been planning a 4-day solo trek around the lake, craving silence, cold air, a break from everything. Day 1 was peaceful, untouched snow, air so sharp it made your lungs sting, and a lake so still it looked carved from glass. Too still. Like something was waiting beneath it. Still, I pushed forward. By nightfall I'd set my tent a short distance from the shoreline. I couldn't sleep, so I stepped outside to watch the sky. Then I heard it. Tap. Soft. Deliberate. I swept my flashlight over the lake. Nothing but an endless white sheet. Tap. Tap. Rhythmic, measured, nothing like ice cracking on its own. I scanned the frozen expanse for 10 long minutes before it finally stopped. The next morning, while collecting snow for water, I froze. Footprints. Bare ones. Small, delicate, like a woman's. They led straight to the lake's edge. But there were no prints returning. A handprint marked the ice, pressed hard, fingers splayed wide. Not fresh, but not old either. Uneasy, I followed the trail across the lake. The ice was thick enough for snowmobiles, 6 inches at least. I stepped onto it, boots crunching softly. Halfway across, a voice rose from below. Wait. I jerked back, staring down. The ice here was clearer, bluish, almost transparent. A shadow drifted beneath me, slow, human-shaped. Don't go, the voice whispered again. My throat tightened. I ran the rest of the way, not looking back once. I camped far from the lake that night, deep in the woods. But around 2 a.m., something breathed outside my tent. Slow. Heavy. Right beside my head. I held my breath, but the breathing continued, steady, patient. When I reached for my flashlight, the sound shifted to the foot of my tent, slow dragging motions circling around me. Then the zipper twitched. Just once. A tiny sound. Like a fingertip brushing the metal. I sat awake until sunrise. All I wanted was to finish the loop, get back to my truck, and never return. But as I hiked, the footsteps began, always behind me, perfectly in sync with mine. When I stopped, the steps stopped. When I sped up, they followed. But the snow told the truth. Bare footprints. The same size as before. And every time I turned, the prints ended exactly where I had just been standing, as if the person making them stopped the instant I looked. By afternoon, I reached a narrow frozen channel. Crossing it was the only option. The ice was cloudy white, thick enough, safe enough. I stepped out. At the center, something made me glance down. My reflection stared back. And behind it, a woman. Under the ice. Her hair floated in dark strands. Her pale face stared straight up with wide, unblinking eyes. I stumbled and nearly fell. Her reflection didn't move. Her lips parted slowly, as if she were trying to speak. A crack split the ice beneath me. I sprinted the rest of the way, collapsing to my knees on the far side. When I looked back, her face was still visible, faint as a memory. That night, camped only a day's hike from the exit trail, something woke me again. Movement. But not footsteps this time, something copying my movements exactly. When I shifted my leg, the sound happened outside the tent. When I inhaled, a faint echo breath followed. When I brushed my sleeve, the same whispering sound repeated. It wasn't coincidence. It was imitation. Perfect imitation. I froze. The sounds froze. Then a faint vibration pressed through the frozen ground, like a hand pushing upward from beneath the earth, or the ice hidden under the snow. By dawn, I was shaking. Only one day left. One final crossing. And of course, it had to be the widest, deepest section of the lake. The ice stretched out like a sheet of blue glass. Too smooth. Almost reflective. My boots felt unbearably loud as I stepped onto it. Halfway across, the steps started again. Step. 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 But this time I didn't need to guess. They were coming from directly under me. I whispered, "Please don't." The steps continued. Then her voice rose through the ice, clearer than ever, raw with grief. "Don't leave me alone again." Again. My heart hammered. I had never seen her in my life. But she spoke like she knew me, like she'd been waiting. Tap. Tap. Her fingers tapped the underside of the ice, perfectly in rhythm with my steps. The ice thinned as I walked, turning from white to blue to nearly transparent. And there she was. Floating directly beneath me, hair drifting like ink in water. Her hands pressed flat to the underside of the ice. Her eyes locked on mine, pleading, desperate. "Stay," she mouthed. I took a step back. She moved with me. Not chasing. Mirroring. She lifted her right hand, and my arm rose with it. Not because she forced me. Because she wanted to walk with me. Move with me. Live through me. I tried to pull away, and her face twisted in panic. Her hand slammed upward. The ice bulged under my boots. A deafening crack ripped across the lake like thunder tearing through glass. I ran. The ice shattered behind me, exploding into jagged sheets as the woman screamed from below. "Don't leave me." I didn't look back. Not once. I ran until my legs nearly gave out. By late morning, I finally reached the parking lot. My truck sat alone in the cold sunlight. My hands shook as I reached for my keys. Then I saw it. A photograph tucked under my windshield wiper. I pulled it free, dread icing through my veins. It was a picture of me. Standing on the ice. Taken from behind. And next to me, beneath the surface, was the faint outline of a woman standing under the ice. On the back, scrawled in shaky handwriting. "You walk like me." The zipper moved by itself. Not fast, not like an animal tugging or the wind pulling at the flap. No, it slid inch by inch, each metal tooth clicking apart as if someone were deliberately, carefully opening it. I didn't think I was awake at first. But then cold air slipped inside the tent and crawled across my skin. I sat up so fast my head hit the fabric above me. Someone was opening my tent. From the outside. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just watched the widening gap. Something pushed its way in, two thin fingers, or maybe a tool. Steady, controlled. Not shaking. Not clumsy. Intentional. I grabbed the closest object, my metal water bottle, and held it like a weapon. The zipper kept going. No pause. No hesitation. Whoever was out there knew exactly what they were doing. Just as the opening reached halfway, I raised my arm to swing. The zipper froze. Not because the person ran. Not because of the wind. They stopped because they realized I was awake. For a moment, the night was silent. Me inside. Them outside. Then a voice whispered through the gap. "Don't move." That was the beginning of the worst night I've ever lived through. But to understand it, I have to go back to the start. My name is Mason. People say I'm too brave for my own good. I never thought much of it. I've been hiking alone since I was 16. The woods always felt safer than cities. So when I decided to camp in Hollow Ridge Reserve, I expected peace. A long, quiet hike. A night under the stars. Nothing more. I arrived early, sunlight filtering through tall pines, the kind of scenery travel magazines use on their covers. The air smelled clean. The forest felt open and familiar. But just past 5 p.m., everything changed. The forest went silent. Not evening quiet. Not restful. Dead silent. No insects. No birds. No breeze. A stillness so complete it felt wrong. I should have turned back, but I kept walking until I found a place to camp, an open patch between old trees, far from the main trail. I cooked, read a bit, climbed into the tent, and let the dark settle in. I had just closed my eyes when I heard footsteps. Soft. Slow. Human. Walking in circles around my tent. At first I told myself it was the deer I'd seen earlier. But deer don't pace in perfect loops. And they don't stop for long stretches before starting again. But whatever was out there did. Finally I whispered, "Hello." The footsteps stopped instantly. Silence. I waited 1 minute. Then 2. Then 5. Nothing. Eventually, exhaustion pulled me under. I woke with the sun and stepped outside. That's when I saw them. Footprints. Bare footprints. A full ring around my tent. And the worst part? The feet were shaped normally, except the toes pointed inward, toward each other, like the person walked with twisted ankles. The prints were fresh. I felt a shiver run down my spine, but I convinced myself it had to be some local oddball. Weird, yes, but not supernatural. People do strange things in the woods. I continued my hike. But the silence followed me. And the feeling of being watched grew stronger with every mile. Every shadow seemed to shift. Every rustle felt intentional. Before dusk, I found another campsite, reluctantly. I wanted to keep moving, but hiking in total darkness was suicide. So I set up the tent again. I had barely turned off my flashlight when something tapped the wall beside my head. Slow. Deliberate. Tap. 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 Then the tapping moved around the corner, near the entrance, behind me. Like someone was running their fingers along the fabric, circling the tent. "Who's there?" I yelled. The tapping stopped immediately. I pressed my back against the opposite wall, heart hammering, gripping the flashlight. Then a hand pressed against the nylon. A clear shape. Palm. Long fingers. Pushing in slightly, as if feeling for me through the thin fabric. I scrambled backward, knocking into my backpack. The hand stayed there a moment, then slid down and disappeared. I grabbed the zipper, ready to run, but outside, it was pitch black. My flashlight revealed nothing but shadows. Trees stood motionless, silent, waiting. I zipped the tent shut again. The forest remained silent. Hours crawled by. Around 2 a.m., after lying awake in rigid terror, I finally blinked, just once. That's when it started. The zipper opening. Slow. Precise. Metal tooth by metal tooth. I watched the slit widen, the moonlight slicing into the tent. Fingers slipped through, dirty, thin, moving with purpose. Someone was coming in. I raised the water bottle, hands shaking so hard the metal clattered against my palm. The fingers paused. Then that whisper again. Don't move. Every muscle in my body seized. The fingers retreated. The zipper froze. Silence returned, too complete, too focused. Then slow footsteps walked away from the tent. Not running. Not hiding. Just leaving. But it didn't feel like I'd scared them off. It felt like they'd decided something. I waited until the footsteps faded. Then I grabbed my bag, ripped the zipper open, and sprinted into the night. I didn't care about the noise. I didn't care about direction. I just ran. Branches whipped my face. Rocks tore into my shins. My flashlight beam shook violently. Then I heard it behind me. Footsteps. Fast ones. Chasing me. I ran harder, lungs clawing for air. My legs burned. The forest blurred. I burst into a clearing, moonlight spilling across the grass. And standing right in the middle of it was a man. Barefoot. Dirty. Clothes hanging off him in ribbons. Head tilted unnaturally. His feet were turned inward, the same prints from around my tent. He didn't move. Didn't speak. Just stared. Like he was studying me. Then he raised one arm and pointed behind me. I turned. Another figure stepped out of the trees. Barefoot. Inward turned feet. Clothes torn. Face hidden in shadow. Then another. I didn't wait to see more. I ran. I crashed through the forest, half sliding, half falling, until the trees thinned and I stumbled onto a gravel service road. An hour later, a ranger truck found me. They brought me in, checked me for injuries, tried to get a statement. I told them everything, the footprints, the tapping, the hand against the tent, the whisper. The ranger didn't look confused. He looked afraid. That section of the forest was closed 3 years ago, he said. Why? I asked. He hesitated. There were 2 men living deep out there. Brothers. Reclusive. When the state tried to move them, they disappeared. Haven't been seen since. The chill that ran through me felt like ice water in my veins. What do you think happened to them? I whispered. He stared straight ahead. No idea. But if you saw someone, you're lucky they let you leave. They offered an escort back the next morning. I declined. Because I knew they weren't gone. They were still there. Watching. Waiting. I haven't camped alone since. But sometimes, when I'm lying awake at night, I swear I hear it again. The zipper. Sliding open. Tooth by tooth. And then, just beneath my breath. Don't move.